Good morning, internet land. Welcome back. We are waiting again for our straggler Instagram, and as soon as it comes online, we will get started with our episode in its official capacity. Morgan,
Yes.
how are you this morning while we wait? Oh, never mind. It's back.
Okay,
Tell us how you
great.
are in 1 second.
Okay, so we're live. So, welcome to DIY Wellness, the show for people taking personal growth into their own hands. On this show, Brian and I, each episode, explore a different strategy for improving quality of life and well being. And our hope is that you listen, take what you like, and throw in the garbage what you don't. And then, hopefully, as a team, collectively, Brian and I and our listeners will all gradually continue to improve our quality of life and well being. So, Brian, how are you taking personal growth into your own hands this week?
Okay, well, I'm so glad you asked. How I'm taking personal growth into my own hands this week is something that I try to do, generally speaking, in my life, but that obviously it's more present at sometimes than other times. But it's to sit with my feelings, to not run away
Mhm.
from the hard things that I feel, from the hard things that my mental stories make me deal with, have me dealing with, and sitting with our feelings is as Morgan was saying right before we got on, it is the golden ticket. It is the way forward. It's like the secret sauce in so many things. So what we're going to get into today is what it really means to sit with your feelings, because it doesn't mean what we think it means. Then we're also going to talk about how to do it skillfully, because you can sit with your feelings, and if they're pretty scary, it can seem like that's going to make it worse, right? But there are skills you can bring to bear. So we're going to explain what it means really to sit with your feelings and explain some methods for how to do it that have worked for us.
Mhm. Yeah. So, what Brian and I were talking about right before we hopped on to this live is that sitting with your feelings is something that most people are never taught how to do. It sounds very simple. It sounds very like, I don't know. It sound when you haven't learned about how it works, it sounds ineffective. It sounds like, "Oh, if I sit with my feelings, then they're gonna get worse, and I'm gonna start spiraling." And here's the thing, sitting with your feelings is different than ruminating on them. It's different than resisting them, and it really is kind of a difficult skill to cultivate.
Hmm.
But, Brian and I, having been in, I guess, self-help spaces or being trained and certified life coaches, this is something that is taught as literally like the thing that is needed to break difficult habits, to break addictions. It is essentially the ability to sit with your discomfort without adding fuel to it.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
that's what
Without adding meaning.
allows, yes, without adding meaning. And it will allow, when done successfully, it allows the emotions, uncomfortable or comfortable or pleasurable or whatever, it allows them to dissipate. And then what's left over is the thing that everybody really wants in life, which is just a sense of peace and calm.
Yeah, exactly. And before they dissipate, what happens when we sit with our feelings is we experience them fully. And so this is
Mhm.
the reason why we tend to either avoid them completely, which culture supports and teaches us to do. So it's like it's
Right.
not like you're bad or wrong for avoiding your feelings. You've been taught that for however many years you've been alive. And
Yep.
it's not good for you. So we're trying to find a way to do something different. But the what happens when you sit with your feelings, not in the ruminating or wallowing way, because when you're ruminating or wallowing, you're not experiencing that feeling fully. You're just adding more and more feelings on top, and then experiencing none of them fully, but having a full emotional experience nonetheless. But it's not one that's being processed, it's one that's overwhelming you, because you're sitting with the emotions but ruminating, right? And so it becomes this like cyclical spiral upward
Yeah.
of whatever. The reason I'm honing in on this part is because there's something to notice with the experiencing fully piece, and then they dissipate. That's a reliable pattern that happens with all, I will really say it, all of our emotions,
Yes.
if we learn the skill of how to sit with them and process them, and how not to add the mental stories. The reason this is so exciting, that we get to experience the emotion fully before it dissipates, is because that um, has the good side, right? Like we are taught to avoid our negative emotions, and so obviously learning this skill, it's going to be music to our ears that they get to dissipate quickly if we learn this skill. But there's also the part where you have to experience them fully, which is really shitty when the emotions are difficult ones, right? Like I'd rather skip
Yeah.
over it and get to the learning and growth in the part where it feels good again. But it needs to be experienced fully in order to be let go and to dissipate. That's how it works. The beauty of this is our culture has also taught us to skip over joy and to skip over celebrating and to skip over all that in favor of work, 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 work. So when you learn the skill of sitting with your feelings, you also get the skill of deeply embracing and enjoying your successes more, deeply
Yeah.
embracing and enjoying your victories more, your celebrations more, your joy more, because you're learning the skill of sitting with your emotions is learning the skill of experiencing it fully without it having to mean something crazy and add to it, and then it
Yeah.
dissipates. So that applies as much to abject terror and despair and sadness as it does to joy and excitement and all of that, right? So sitting with your emotions is kind of a two-step process. You got to experience it fully and then allow it to dissipate. And the experiencing it fully part is a gift when they're positive, and it's the thing we hate so much when they're negative. Therein lies
Mhm.
the skills, the sort of techniques and the sort of methodology that we're going to get into now about how to go about this.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanna give one quick example of how it is qualitatively different or how it feels different to actually sit with your feelings than it does to resist them, ruminate, plan into them. I think that a lot of people can kind of relate to just an experience of anxiety or nervousness, and when you're sitting with anxiety or nervousness, it'll look like noticing that feeling, being like, "Oh, like, I'm feeling anxious." And then it'll usually be followed by a sense of acceptance, like, "Okay, I'm feeling anxious. That's okay. This happens. This doesn't mean anything. It's just anxiety is happening, and that's it." Right? But when we're resisting or when we think that we're sitting with anxiety, but we're actually resisting it or adding to it, it'll be, "I shouldn't feel anxious. I shouldn't feel anxious. What's wrong? What
Yeah.
is causing me to feel anxious?"
How do
And
I
then
get
you're,
to the
like,
bottom of
trying
this?
to, yeah, how do I figure it out? How do I, like, pull apart the pieces? And that's what causes anxiety to spiral and, like, peak and create panic attacks and things like that. It's when you add energy to it, anything other than it's just happening and it's okay, and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna breathe through it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that anxiety is, like, easy to solve, right? I'm not trying to minimize that experience, but I'm saying there's a difference in the way that we handle it, in the way that we experience it or allow it in our bodies that will change the direction that it heads in.
Yeah.
Um, and the same goes for other emotions. Are we accepting it? Are we sitting with it, which is what Brian and I are kind of encouraging, or are we resisting? Are we ruminating? Are we adding energy to it?
Yeah. And it's an analogy. It's like I like to think of it like think of all of the different emotions as little tiny versions of your experience. And like if you had a person come to your house and they were really upset and angry, sitting with them and adding to all the reasons why they're angry. Yeah, you should be angry. Let's get angry. Let's get angry, right? Like it might help them in a minor way to feel this catharsis like you understand, but it's also going to leave them by the end of the conversation with you still feeling very angry. Whereas if
Yeah,
someone comes over and they're angry and you can sit with them, truly, this is the way you would sit with your emotions too. You sit with them and you say, "Tell me everything."
yeah,
Like, what is it? What is it? And then you just accept everything they tell you, but don't add to it. Like if Mo comes to my house and she's telling me all the reasons she's angry, I just hold space for her. Say, "Yeah, that's got to be hard. That
yeah,
sucks. I get why you're angry.
yeah.
I
It's
really
okay to be
understand
angry.
how you feel angry. Yeah, it's okay to be angry without adding any of my story of like, well, yeah, your friend shouldn't have done that, or your boss shouldn't have, or you're so right about like those things may or may not be true. It doesn't matter. The thing is, those when they're done internally, they are what we call wallowing, or they are what we call ruminating or resisting. So I'm using this example of what you would do externally with a friend and say, bring that inside, like the way you would sit and hold space and accept everything they tell you, but you would have an eye on trying not to make it worse for them because you're a good friend. That's the kind of strength
Yeah.
and wisdom. This is why it's a skill, because normally when we feel an emotion like anxiety or anger, we are completely blended with that emotion, and that's it until it passes, or until we're done ruminating, or until something else better comes on TV, or whatever it is that's going to distract us. But this is to say, let's interrupt that pattern. Let's interrupt that, and so we can be there with our anxious feelings, and by practicing bringing on the strong and wise part of us, the strong and wise force within us that can actually contain our anxiety, the same way you would for a friend. Like we've probably all had the experience of like being stressed out about something and distracted, and then somebody comes in the room with something that obviously takes precedence, right? Like it's obviously more
Mhm.
distracting or more whatever, and like you need to go be there for them. And when that happens, you are able to drop whatever was
Yeah.
stressing you out and go be there for that person, because life requires it, right? And like so knowing that, right? And realizing that's the same with us. When I'm distracted over the dishes in the kitchen sink and then something happens to make me really angry, it's okay to stop and just be with the angry part and let the
Yeah.
other distractions go, the same way you would for a human friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So self-kindness, this is what we're talking about, and curiosity are big parts of the skill set. It's difficult to be in the middle of anxiety or anger and say, "How can I be kind to myself?" But this is the way forward. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? So this is where it becomes a skill and a practice. Or to be in the middle of the big emotion and say, "Let me become curious." You know what I mean? As opposed, not curious to figure it out and solve the problem and ruminate in that way, but curious, like, what do you have to tell me? Why are you here? Instead of being flustered by the emotion, become curious. Like same way as if you had a friend come over and you just were disinterested and they were angry and you were just disinterested. But as soon as you're curious, like, tell me what's upsetting you. I want to know. I'm here for you. I'm
Yeah.
here to hear it out. Then that friend will already start to relax, even if they're still mad, right? And that's
Yeah.
what we are trying to do for ourselves, which is where it gets very complex, because culture teaches us that this stuff is weird and hokey and, oh, inner child work and whatever. But honestly, it's so powerful to be able to disengage from whatever you're feeling in the moment and then witness it and say, "Whoa, Brian, you're angry. That's
Yeah.
okay. That's okay."
Yeah, well, and also, the other layer to this is that most emotions, and probably all, serve a purpose. And so if you're able
Yes.
to watch them, sit with them without resistance, then you can kind of gain whatever wisdom or knowledge, like, there is to gain from them. And so my favorite example of this, and Brian and I did a whole series on emotions and their purposes, but when you're feeling angry, it is a signal to yourself or your body that a boundary has been crossed. And it may not be a boundary that has been, expressed to whoever has crossed it, right? But you know that when you're feeling angry, something that you don't like or feel it should not happen has happened, right? And
Yeah.
so it's almost a, you can look at it, and if you fully experience your anger in a way that isn't adding to it, then you can gain wisdom about what boundary needs to be expressed or what boundary needs to be reinforced with whoever it
Mhm.
is that made me angry. And then that's how I can help protect myself against these boundaries being crossed in the future. And so I can use the emotions themselves to give me guidance on how to help me be more regulated in the future, because it
Yes.
helps me kind of manage my life.
Which is exactly how we are supposed to use emotions, in my opinion.
Mhm.
That's the point of emotions. They are a guidance system for us. But because they're so emotional, we get
Mhm.
distracted by the fact that they're a guidance system and we get enveloped in them. And this is the skill of sitting with your emotions. It helps you, I don't know, peek up out of that envelope, so to speak. And
Yeah.
so you cannot be so enveloped in there, you know. And the thing about boundaries and anger, just to put a fine point on that, like sometimes it might not even be external. You might be angry because you violated your own internal boundary. And so that might take some time to really realize, right? Like, oh, for example, in a case of my own, like it'd be like I told myself I'm not gonna have sugar anymore, and then I end up at Starbucks or something. Like nobody crossed my boundary, but I crossed my own boundary, and that then still made me feel anger, and then that anger might be mixed
Yeah.
with guilt or sadness or regret or whatever else. But the key there is if I sit with those feelings, they will instruct me in a way to help me next time. Whereas if I ruminate on them and assign meaning to them, oh, that means I'm weak. Oh, that means I'll never be able to change. Oh, that means blah, blah, blah. Whatever I'm saying it means is never true, because meaning is something we get to make and decide about. So that's the first thing. So any meaning you think it has, you can take it to the bank that that's not the inherent truth if you don't like that meaning, because meaning is something we get to decide. And so anyway, all of this
Yeah,
is to say, yeah, let yourself sit with the difficult spots, the difficult stuff, because the wisdom is in there, like Mo was saying, and it will teach you.
yeah, yeah. So to kind of, I suppose, sum it up, the how to be with your emotions is quite literally to relax into them and allow whatever they are without adding thoughts to it, without
Yeah.
thinking about what why is it here? Should I or should I not be feeling this? And then just kind of being kind to yourself in the sense that you tell yourself it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling.
Yeah.
I think that's usually the core of it is most times when we're feeling unpleasant emotions, we tell ourselves it's not okay to feel that way, and then we rapidly look for something that can cure that feeling,
Yes.
right? But if we're
Exactly.
like, "It's okay for me to feel uncomfortable," and we increase our ability to experience whatever it is, and Brian will probably talk about, the dial metaphor, which kinda helps with this, but the more that you increase your capacity to experience something uncomfortable and not make it mean anything, and just let it be in your body, the quicker it's gonna dissipate because it literally only takes without resistance, it takes any emotion 90 seconds to pass through your body. But that 90
Physiologically, that's true. The
yeah,
chemical makeup of emotions physiologically, 90 seconds
right.
and it's over.
But we can re-trigger emotions, and that's what we usually do, and so when people hear, "Oh, 90 seconds, that's so short, like, my emotions don't, pass through that quickly," it's because every time you have a thought about an emotion, it restarts that timer. And so you could indefinitely feel angry if you're in your head about what makes you angry and you're, like, restarting that timer, but if
Yeah.
you're able to do this thing of sitting with your emotions, then you can feel something negative and it goes away, and then you can move on with your life.
Yes, exactly. And the thing about not adding the thoughts, like, just to be clear about this, like, it's not like you have to be perfect and suddenly, okay, I'm going to sit with my emotions and I'm going to turn off my thinker and then that's going to be that, because that's not going to be easy to turn off your thinker. So the way to detach from the thoughts, it's like we might not be able to help them coming, like, oh, why is this here? It may just come. And then it's almost counterintuitive, but then you want to add a thought to it, which is that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So you can't necessarily turn off the thoughts that will come,
Mhm.
but you can
Yeah.
detach from needing to answer the thoughts, right? Like, so your thought, the part of your brain that does the thinking, it's an automatic thing, like the part of your heart that does the heartbeat. And you can do a lot of crazy training and slow your heartbeat. Same thing, you can do a lot of crazy meditative training and slow your thinker, or you can just detach from the thinker the way you are detached from the heartbeat. The heartbeat doesn't control you, it just helps you. The thinker can be the same way. The thinker's just sending a ticker tape of thoughts through you. And when you're trying to do this sit with emotions thing, you don't have to push them away. You just have to decide not to get involved. Like, the thought might come and say, oh, yeah, I deserve to be mad because the teacher shouldn't have spoken to me that way. And you're just going to go, okay, well, that thought doesn't matter right now because I'm sitting with and moving through my emotions, right? Like it's that kind of thing. You just, and sometimes you're, as you hear this, you may, well, what if the teacher did speak to me that way? I should know that so I can stand up for myself next time. Yeah, totally. That's true. But that's the wisdom that comes from sitting with the emotion without the story. You'll get to the place of wisdom, I promise. You just don't have to go through the ruminating factory to get there, which is what we think is the way, but it isn't the way, which is why we're
Yeah,
doing this show today, to help you
yeah.
sit with
Well,
your emotions.
in that example, sitting with it first is going to allow you to be like, "Okay, so, like, what" like, you almost just kind of get closer to yourself. I don't know how to
Hmm.
describe exactly what that feeling is, but it's like it feels like I'm sitting with me and I can understand me and accept me when I sit with the feelings. And then through that, then it's like rather than me just being like, she shouldn't have said that, she shouldn't have said that, blah, then I can be like, okay, here's what I'm going to do about it.
Hmm.
without just like being in this state of rage. Like the rage passes and then you can feel confident in how you want to address it once the feeling has passed. But when you're
Yeah.
actively experiencing a feeling and trying to address it while you're feeling it, that doesn't usually work very well, because when our emotions are activated, our usually either fear center or different parts of our brain that handle logic are like shut down. Like literally when you're experiencing anger or fear or usually a negative emotion,
Mhm.
your logic center of your brain doesn't access as much blood flow, and so you literally can't solve a problem while you're activated. um,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so what we're advocating for is moving through the activation, allowing your nervous system to calm down and reset so the logic center of your brain turns back on, and then you're going to have access to your solution.
Mhm.
But if you try to solve it while you're activated, it usually is not going to go that great.
Yeah, exactly, and honestly, what can happen, it's very mystifying, like, you'll have the thought while you're activated, if you're having the thought like, "They shouldn't have spoken to me that way. I don't deserve that." Like, it's not even whether or not the thought's false, like, it's just that that's not helpful while you're activated to be thinking that way because you can't come to a decision like Morgan just articulately said. However, once you've let the emotion pass and the logic center comes back on, you may find that a very similar thought is still there, but it's there differently, like, 'cause the thought might show up like, "Yeah, I really didn't deserve to be talked to like that. That wasn't
Mhm.
cool." And that will be a known thing for you, and you'll know it from a place of confidence, not from a place of being in the middle of your hurt feelings. You'll just know from a place of confidence, yeah, I don't deserve to be spoken to that way. And then that will inform the way you go and set that boundary with that person and say, if you talk to me like that in the future, I'm going to have to leave the room because I don't deserve that. None of that can be come to while you're in the middle of being activated and angry, even if you're having the exact same thought. So that's what I want you to hear. It's not like all the thoughts that come up while you're activated are necessarily false and wrong, although lots of them are, let's be honest. But sometimes you might be right on it with like the fact that there was an injustice. Like you might be
Yeah.
right on it. Your mind might be right on it, but it's not the time to be bringing it to the court of your mind. It's the time to be bringing it to the heart and letting yourself calm down and giving yourself all the kindness and love. And then it can go back through the court of your mind. And you may find that the same thoughts feel true, but you'll have a wise, intelligent solution to go with them then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we didn't actually get into the dial. So I'm just going to mention it really briefly since you brought it up
Okay.
before so people understand, and then we can call it there. But the
Sounds
dial,
good.
it's something from acceptance and commitment therapy, and it's a metaphor that Dr. Hayes uses. He's the founder of that school of uh,
Yeah.
therapy.
Stephen
And
Hayes?
Dr. Stephen Hayes. Yeah, exactly. He's amazing. He writes really great books. One called The Liberated Mind, which if anyone's
Yep.
interested in these tools that you're about to hear, this one and things like it, they're all in that book and there's loads more.
Yeah.
But
I have it on
the
my shelf.
willingness to suffer dial is like you put two imaginary dials in front of a person and one of them says suffering and the other says willingness to suffer. And you say, okay, what are you going to do to the suffering knob? Everybody always turns it down as far down as they could possibly go. Let's turn it off. We don't want suffering. Okay, but the thing is that that doesn't work. You can't actually turn the suffering knob down. Like it doesn't do what you want it to do. That knob, it doesn't work. So the only knob that will work is the willingness to suffer knob. So the suffering knob, it's broken. You can't control it. You can't just turn suffering down and have suffering be less. So the only knob now you can use is the willingness to suffer dial. And so, okay, what do you want to do with that one? And people go, well, let's turn it down. Like if I can't turn down suffering, I can turn down my willingness to suffer and then I will suffer less. But therein lies the rub. And that's why we're having this whole topic of sitting with your emotions, because when you are not willing to suffer, you actually are not able to sit with your emotions because the negative emotions will feel like suffering. So what you want to do, paradoxically, counterintuitively, is turn up your willingness to suffer dial as high as it will go. Because what you're doing is you're turning up your ability to be accepting of whatever your experiences are. The willingness to suffer dial could also be named acceptance of my experience dial. And so
Yep.
that's what you're doing. You're turning the acceptance of your experiences all the way up. When you turn acceptance all the way up, this is the beautiful paradox. Suffering tends to go down. There's
Yeah.
no promise, because sometimes you'll turn your willingness dial to suffer up, and you will go into a thing where there's a lot of suffering for a time, and that's what you have to deal with. But even that, in that suffering, if you're in a place of acceptance, you will suffer less in that suffering because you're accepting it and moving through it. But usually what happens is when we are willing to suffer, 90% of the suffering starts to immediately disappear, because that was the suffering of resistance and wallowing, not the
Yeah.
suffering of the event that caused the suffering. So
Yeah.
hearing that, like, if you can allow yourself to be in a place of acceptance and no longer afraid of the suffering that might come as a result of sitting with your feelings, you will find then that the suffering that's been related to the avoidance and the suffering that's been related to the resistance, that all goes away very, very quickly. And you're just left with the seed of the suffering that you've been avoiding that whole time. And then that one you can heal within 90 seconds.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's like traumas and things that you're going to work through, but
Right.
even that, like knowing them, accepting them, and finding ways to sit with them is even the way forward with deep, deep trauma recovery. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so all in all, the thing that is often very surprising to learn is that most of the negative emotions we experience are because or as a result of resisting the original negative emotions,
yeah.
which causes them to grow and expand and take up more space in our mind and in our lives. And if we're able to accept it and be kind to ourselves and be like, hey, like, it's okay that you're feeling that way, and I'm just going to feel it, and I'm going to be willing to feel it. I'm going to allow that to exist in my body.
Mhm.
It's going to go away like much faster than if you're re-triggering it over and over and over again because you keep retelling the same story that makes you angry
Yeah.
or whatever other emotion we're trying to, avoid.
And if it doesn't go away, stay in relationship to it, because the chances are then you might not even realize you're inadvertently adding another mental story. So just stay in relationship with it. And over time, that emotion will start to trust the relationship that you're having with it. The emotion
Yeah.
shows up and you say, it's okay that you're here. I welcome you. Let's sit. Right. Like,
Yeah.
so even if the emotions don't necessarily, the pattern might not uproot itself from your life, but that emotion will get used to the fact that you are no longer trying to chase it away, and
Yeah.
in that alone is less suffering, because now you're accepting all the parts of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a great talk, Brian.
Yeah. Thank you, Mo. And thank you, everybody. So we will be back again next Monday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. Until then, keep taking personal growth into your own hands. Thank you, everybody. We love you so much.
All right.